1 hour ago, Oak Island finally broke its silence. Not with a discovery, not with a clue, but with something no treasure hunter, no historian, and no skeptic was prepared for. It started when the team reached a part of the island no one had ever touched. The ground was soft. Too soft. Almost as if something underneath had just shifted. And then, without warning, the soil collapsed, revealing a chamber sealed away for hundreds of years. Inside it, they didn't find treasure. They found evidence. Evidence that someone had already reached the heart of Oak Island, long before any modern explorer ever set foot there. A message carved into the stone, a symbol no one has been able to explain, and an object that changes everything about the island's past. Experts are calling this the moment we've been waiting for. Skeptics are silent, and the entire world is watching, because what was revealed just 1 hour ago might finally expose the true secret of Oak Island, the one hidden from the world for centuries. Stay until the very end, because this is the discovery that rewrites the entire legend. And before we dive in, make sure you subscribe so you never miss the truth behind the world's biggest mysteries. The footage you see next will turn Oak Island's entire history upside down. The crew's midnight panic rush begins. It was night, the air was a little chilly, and a strange silence hung over the island. Suddenly, the control room alarm sounded, and Rick's radio received an emergency call. "Everyone to the shaft, now!" Without a second's notice, the entire team in their trucks and ATVs raced toward the site. The darkness was so intense that only the thin white beams of headlights were visible. As they approached the ground, the atmosphere had completely changed, as if the air itself was warning that something unusual was about to happen. The fear was evident on the workers' faces, but the excitement was equally strong. An excitement Oak Island hadn't experienced in 228 years. Everyone quickly turned on their flashlights and raced down the side path strewn with mud, wood, and loose stones toward the garden shaft. Rick and Marty were practically running toward the shaft, saying to each other, "Whatever this is, it's big." Behind them, technicians were running with their metal cases containing thermal scanners, pressure meters, and emergency gear. The cool night air combined with the light from the flashlights created a creepy, horror movie-like vibe, but no one slowed down. As the crew approached the shaft, they found faint footprints on the ground and dropped equipment, indicating that the workers below had also panicked when the sensors suddenly triggered. Flashlights flickered around, each light casting different shadows, making it difficult to discern where the real danger lay. But no one backed down. Curiosity was more powerful than fear. Upon reaching the site, Rick had everyone stand in a circle and said, "Listen, whatever shook the ground, it's not natural. We go down, we check, and we get answers." Upon hearing this, the entire team exchanged silent nods. Nods laced with fear, excitement, and a distinct sense of certainty that something big was about to happen. No one knew what they would find below, but everyone felt this was no ordinary night. The first thing everyone noticed near the garden shaft was a slight tremor in the ground. This wasn't the kind of vibration caused by machinery. It felt different, steady, and rhythmic. The crew members reached down and touched the soil, looking at each other in fear and surprise. No one could understand what was happening down there at this time of night. Rick yelled, "Shut everything down!" And within seconds, cranes, pumps, drills, every machine was shut off. Under normal conditions, the ground vibrations would die out the moment the machinery stopped, since heavy equipment often causes shaking. But this time, something completely different occurred. The instant the machines powered down, the tremor actually grew stronger, almost like something huge was slowly shifting in some deep hidden space. Marty crouched down and listened carefully, then told Rick, "Bro, this is not mechanical." His voice carried a strange mix of fear and thrill, as if he already sensed this vibration wasn't coming from anything natural. The rest of the crew quickly grabbed the ground sensors and checked the live readings right away. The monitors showed constant small spikes, and the strangest part was that the vibration's frequency stayed perfectly steady, almost like a heartbeat. Dr. Spooner pressed his palm gently against the earthen wall and said, "Either something moved, or something is waking up down there." After hearing that, everyone froze. It suddenly felt as though each person was secretly wondering if the ancient structure mentioned in old legends had finally begun to stir, or even open. Seconds slipped by with no sign of the tremor fading. Soft waves rippled through the ground, faint enough that even a tiny bottle of water trembled. The cameraman whispered, "Guys, is someone down there?" And in that moment, every single one of them realized the vibration might not just be a tremor. It might be a signal. The mood shifted instantly as they stood at the garden shaft door. Strong winds blasted outside, but inside the shaft, everything was so still it felt like the air itself had been frozen in place. Rick strapped on the harness first. Marty got in right behind him, and Spooner was already tightening his gloves. When the elevator cage locked for descent, all three of them showed the same expression, a mix of fear, excitement, and the heavy feeling that there was no turning back now. As the elevator started lowering them down, the light above dimmed within seconds. Every tiny jolt of the metal cage echoed loudly, making it seem like the world was slowly squeezing them in. As they went deeper, an odd smell seeped into the air, a metallic scent, like iron mixed with wet earth. Rick whispered, "You smell that? That's new. That wasn't here last week." A little farther down, the temperature suddenly dropped. The air turned so cold that Marty rubbed his hands together and said, "Dude, is someone running AC down here?" Spooner tried to laugh it off, but even his voice shook a bit. A sudden cold blast like that meant there had to be an opening or a chamber that had recently exposed itself. This was exactly the kind of sign the team had been chasing for years. As they descended past the walls, their flashlights landed on old timber beams, some bent at angles that looked dangerously unnatural. But the real shock hit when a fresh crack suddenly split across one of the beams, as though something heavy had slid down. Spooner quickly spoke up. "This is not natural settling. Something moved." Silence took over the elevator cage. As the cage neared the bottom platform, the air from below grew even colder, and the metallic scent became heavier. When their flashlights hit the ground, they saw immediately that the soil looked disturbed, as if something had been dragged underneath very recently. Opening the cage door, Rick simply said, "Whatever happened under this shaft happened recently, and we're about to see it." The very first thing that halted the team as they stepped onto the garden shaft floor was the relentless beeping of the sensors. The technician grabbed a handheld monitor and showed Rick the display. The screen clearly read, "New cavity detected." That meant a hollow space had suddenly formed somewhere underground. Spooner instantly brushed away some soil with his hand, inspected the sample, and said, "This soil is fresh. It shifted not long ago." Hearing that, Rick and Marty exchanged shocked looks, because no digging had been done there in the last 24 hours. When the crew's flashlights swept across the left wall, a strange opening came into view. That section had always been packed with solid earth, but now a small arch-like shape had appeared. Sensor data confirmed it wasn't a natural collapse. It was the starting point of an actual tunnel. A map was brought up immediately, and everyone stared at it, realizing that no historical or modern record had ever shown a tunnel at this location. Rick spoke quietly, almost to himself. If this tunnel wasn't made by us, then who made it? The workers carefully cleared the soil, first with their hands, then with small tools, and within minutes the entrance opened up to nearly 4 feet. The tunnel walls were so smooth, it was obvious someone had shaped them with intention. A light, cool breeze drifted out, the kind that only comes from a deep underground space. Marty pointed his flashlight inside and said, "Guys, this is big. This tunnel really leads somewhere." As the opening widened, the walls came fully into view, and that's when the entire team froze. The walls had perfectly clean, straight lines, so flawless they looked as though modern lasers had carved them. Spooner removed his gloves, pressed his hand against the surface, and instantly said, "These are tool marks, but not from the 1600s or 1700s. They didn't have anything close to this technology back then." Burn marks were scattered in a few sections, as if extreme heat or some kind of torch-like device had been used on the rock. Rick studied part of the wall carefully and said, "Look at this. Not even a millimeter off." The area was so precisely shaped that even Marty struggled to speak. There was no way old spades, chisels, or hand tools could have produced such perfect lines. The cameraman kept filming everything, and his voice could be heard quietly on the recording. "Guys, are you telling me someone used advanced tools down here hundreds of years ago?" Spooner replied without hesitation, "Either advanced tools or advanced people." The tunnel walls also had uniformly spaced indentations, suggesting that some unknown machine had pressed against the rock in a controlled pattern. Modern engineers use similar methods for stabilizing stone, but nothing like this existed centuries in the past. Marty tapped one of the marks with a hammer. The sound wasn't hollow at all. It rang out like finely handled stonework. Whoever made it had done it intentionally and with skill. The tunnel sloped down nearly 12 feet, and past that point, the darkness became so thick that even strong flashlights couldn't cut fully through it. They also felt a faint vibration moving with the airflow, hinting at a hidden chamber deeper inside. Rick turned toward the group and said, "Whatever we thought this was, it's way more complicated." The burn patterns, the symmetry, the precision, it all suggested that the tunnel wasn't just centuries old. It might be far older, or far more technologically advanced than anything they'd imagined. The thought alone rattled everyone. Every mark on the wall told a story, and every story led to the same haunting question. If we didn't build this tunnel, then who did? And with what kind of technology? As they slowly moved deeper into the tunnel, all of them suddenly sensed something large lurking in the darkness ahead. When the flashlight beam slid across a corner, a massive shadow stretched across the wall, and within seconds, the entire form came into view. The team stopped where they stood. Before them was an enormous stone block, perfectly cut, perfectly shaped, the kind of precision that instantly made anyone say, "This can't be natural." Rick lifted his torch higher, and the block lit up completely. Its edges were sharp enough to look freshly cut, and each corner matched flawlessly within 6 inches. Dr. Spooner reached forward and touched the block. The surface was shockingly smooth. No dirt, no erosion, no natural weathering. Spooner leaned in to check the corners, and his face filled with disbelief. In a slow, steady voice, he said, "Nature doesn't do this." Hearing that line, the crew went completely silent. It felt like someone had sucked all the air out of the tunnel at once. The stone block in front of them didn't just show rare craftsmanship. It looked like something capable of rewriting history. It stood about 7 feet tall, 4 feet wide, with its depth still unknown. Faint parallel lines covered its surface, as if an advanced cutting tool or machine had shaped it long ago. Marty lightly tapped it as a joke, but the sound that echoed back was nothing normal, more like a hollow metallic ring than any kind of stone. Then Spooner added another shock. "This isn't debris from a collapse. Someone placed this here on purpose." Rick immediately ordered the team to bring a thermal camera to see what was behind the block. The technicians set up the device, powered on the thermal screen, and what appeared next made everyone's chest tighten for a split second. Behind the block, a clear oval-shaped cavity glowed on the display, a chamber roughly 10 to 12 feet long, with a heat signature completely different from the rest of the tunnel. And in the very center of that chamber was a bright orange-red spot, glowing like a warmed object. The air in the tunnel had been freezing for centuries, so how could anything behind the block be radiating heat? Marty scanned the footage nervously and asked, "Is someone down there?" But Spooner, staring at the screen, replied, "No, this isn't a person. This is an object." The heat signature stayed perfectly stable, proving it wasn't biological. Rick spoke with tension in his voice. "So what is it? A device? Some sealed chest with metal reacting inside?" Slowly, everyone began to grasp the impossible. How could something built centuries ago still generate warmth? The technician zoomed in further, revealing even more details: smooth walls, an almost perfectly carved oval shape, and that strange glowing point in the middle. No medieval miner or pirate tunnel could have produced engineering like this. Whoever built this had skills we don't associate with the 1600s or 1700s, Spooner said. When the flashlights shifted back to the stone block, it no longer seemed like just a barrier. It looked like a gate, intentionally placed to keep the truth about the chamber hidden, and the warmth coming from inside. That was the part no one could explain. Rick stared at the thermal screen and said, "We're not just looking at a tunnel. We're looking at evidence of something alive or active beneath Oak Island." As the team began preparing to remove the block, the mood instantly shifted. Heavy pry bars, hydraulic pushers, and metal wedges were positioned. But then, something strange happened. The tunnel lights started to dim and flicker. At first, they suspected a generator glitch, but the technician quickly checked and said, "Power is stable. The lights shouldn't be flickering." A nervous look spread across the entire group. Never before had the lights on Oak Island dimmed like this during an operation, especially not inside a tunnel. The tools pressed against the block. The first push felt normal, but within seconds, the hydraulic system froze, as if something inside the tunnel had pushed back and jammed it. The crew stiffened. Jams like that only happened when an object was impossibly heavy or tightly fixed. Rick moved forward and readjusted the tool himself, but the result didn't change. "It's resisting," he said quietly, "like it doesn't want to move." Spooner placed his hand on the wall and felt the air grow even colder. A faint vibration pulsed around the stone, slow, rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. Marty tried to lighten the mood, laughing nervously. "Bro, don't tell me this thing is alive." But not a single person smiled. The tension had reached the edge of unbearable. The lights flickered again, and each time they dimmed, everyone froze, half afraid the next flicker would leave them in total darkness. Even the cameras began picking up static, as if something was interfering with the air itself. Rick inhaled deeply and said, "We're not backing out. Push again. This block is going to open." On the third attempt, when the tools were pushed to maximum pressure, the block let out a faint tapping sound, then slowly began to shift. That tiny sound sent chills racing down everyone's spine. It felt like a door sealed for centuries had finally decided to open. The block moved back millimeter by millimeter, and with each tiny shift, a thin cloud of metallic dust drifted into the air. A few seconds later, the stone tilted slightly, and in that instant, a powerful rush of wind burst out from behind it. The air felt completely different, icy cold, metallic, and ancient, like trapped centuries-old atmosphere had finally escaped. The crew instinctively shielded their faces, but their eyes stayed locked on the darkness revealed behind the block. This was no longer just a tunnel. It was the entrance to a hidden world. When the opening widened enough, Rick raised his flashlight and aimed it inside. What they saw made the entire team freeze. Soft, golden reflections danced across the chamber walls, as if some shiny surface was catching and bouncing the light. As the dust settled, a metallic box slowly came into view at the center of the chamber. It was half buried in the soil, but the top of it was unmistakably visible. Smooth, with a dark golden tint and detailed engravings lining the edges. It looked ancient, almost sacred, like a relic left behind by a civilization lost to time. A faint warmth also shimmered across its surface. The thermal scan had been right. The box really was warm. And that was the part that made no sense. How could an object sealed away for centuries still hold heat? Marty leaned forward, focusing the flashlight and whispering, "Guys, this isn't any ordinary chest." Spooner watched it closely and said, "This is engineered. This is not pirate work. This is something far older." The chamber's air felt heavy and energized, as if something had been trapped inside and was now awakening. Rick stepped carefully into the space, his voice low as he said, "Whatever is inside this box, history is about to change." Every flashlight pointed directly at the metallic chest, and for a moment, the team stood in silent awe, unable to shake the feeling that Oak Island's greatest secret, the greatest one, was now right in front of them. As they entered fully, their attention returned to the box. At first glance, it looked like an old treasure chest, but the moment the flashlight beam hit it directly, its true nature revealed itself. The metal was a dull, deep red, strangely untouched by rust. No metal ever survives Oak Island's damp tunnels for long, but this box seemed nearly pristine. Rick pulled on his gloves and touched the edge, and instantly jerked his hand back when he felt the warmth of the metal. How an object sealed away for so long in a cold, airtight chamber could still be warm was baffling. The surface was smooth, but coated with a faint patina, and deep engravings were carved into each corner. As the angle of the flashlight shifted, the symbols sharpened into clear view. They looked like Templar crosses, yet somehow more ancient than any known version. Spooner leaned in closer, studying them carefully, and said calmly, "These aren't pirate marks. These are older, much older, and far more advanced." A long silence washed over the crew. For decades, the connection between Oak Island and the Templar Knights had been dismissed as rumor, a legend, but the engravings on this box suggested that maybe the legend had been real all along. The depth and precision of the carvings made them appear as though they had been created using tools far beyond the technology of the past. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. See you in the next one.